Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channels, and today I would like to talk about the vast empire. It's Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire begins with the legendary stories about its builder. The Romulus and the Remus were the two brothers, and also the sons of the Mars, the god of Mars, and also their mother was the Latin princess. However, they were abandoned, and they were being raised by the she-wolves, and after becoming grown-ups they wanted to build a city. They chose the seven hills which were carved and rolling mountains. That was the mythologies or the legendary stories. But later the Romans coming from the different areas such as the southern part of Italy and Sicily were taken by the Greeks, and the northern Italy was taken by the Etruscans, and the mainland of Italy like the hill areas were taken by the Latins. So the Latins and also the Greeks and also the Etruscans jointly built up the Rome, and the Rome since was actually geographied by the hill areas and also close ties or touched with the great actually the sea. It was the Mediterranean Sea. So geographically the Rome was very close to the Mediterranean. However, at the time of 753 BC, and the Romans actually began their empires. The history of the Romans began at the times. So after that the Latins gradually captured some areas. However, the Etruscans kings ruled over Rome for long times. At the time of 600s, the Etruscans, the last kings of the Tarquin the Proud, who was very harsh, was driven by the common people of the Romans, and the peoples had decided they would not be actually ruled by any king. So they chose the republic systems where the common peoples would find its representatives. However, this at the time of the 500s BC, the Romans lead great lives, and choosing the consuls, and the consuls were the two persons who lead the countries, and they chose the dictators who would enjoy the supreme and absolute powers, although the short period of times, but he was actually deployed for controlling the unrest and the turmoil situations. However, gradually the Romans republics becoming very stable. At the time of the 60 BCs, there was formed a triumvirate by the Julius Caesar and Pompey and also Crassus. Julius Caesar was a great military leader who showed his outstanding performance against the Gauls, and he conquered the Gauls, and by threatening this with these things, the Crassus became very unhappy, and Pompey also, and the orders Julius Caesar to disband his army to come back to the Rome, but he denied, and he led a military army force to the Romans. The time the Pompeius and Crassus actually fled from the Romans, and the Julius Caesar took the powers, and he becomes the Romans Republic great rulers who enjoyed the great times, and he took some important reforms, and the reforms were like the redistribution of the lands. He introduced the Julian calendars, and he did many good things for the Romans peoples. However, the senators become very angry and become very envious to him. So the senators made the conspiracy against the Julius Caesar. This great man was assassinated at the time of 44 BC. So the Romans peoples lost a great man. So the times, the turmoils and the chaos or the chaotic situations actually at the time prevailing. However, and at the time of 43 BC, there another triumvirate came. Triumvirate means the three persons who ruled a country like the Romans. The second triumvirate, the three rulers or the three person were the Mark Antonius, Octavian, Caesar, and also the Lepidus. Octavian Caesar was among them the best because he was the grand nephew of the Julius Caesar and had a great strategy to conquer his competitors or the challengers. However, at the time, the Mark Antony fall love with the empress of the Egypt, Cleopatra. Both jointly made a strong army and navy to fight against the Octavian Caesar. On the other hand, the Lepidus also ready for fight with the Octavians. However, the Octavian Caesars gradually defeated both of his enemies like the Antony and Cleopatra, those who made the committed suicides, but the Lepidus was strongly defeated by the Octavius. So after taking the positions, the Rome's, he declared himself this, he was Augustus and he was the emperors. From the times the emperor was coming from with the familiarity with the great emperors Octavian Caesars. He showed his great times, but after the great time actually started by or introduced by the Octavian Caesars, because from his ruling times Romans or the Roman history or the Roman peoples had enjoyed the great peace and tranquility, and there is no chaos, chaotic situations, and the people were ruled by the rulers with the great satisfiers. Near about 100 years past, this peaceful time was called the Pax Romana, which means the peaceful time. However, at the times the great things happened. The Christianity gradually became the great religions in the world. So at the time the birth of Jesus Christ was a great event. When the Roman rulers rulings the Roman Empire burst empires, at the times the Jewish peoples were also actually revolted against the Romans, but being failed and captured by the Romans and were seriously tortured. However, at the time, since the Jewish peoples were believers of the monotheisms and the said that they would be saved by a savior who would be a Messiah. The Messiah means the savior. However, the Jesus Christ when appeared and was born, the Jewish people thought that the savior actually come to save them, but later that his teachings and his talkings were different from the Jewish peoples. So the Romans peoples and also the Roman rulers and Jewish peoples conspirated against the Jesus, and he was actually taken to a fault or a crimes, that he was actually preaching the wrong things. So at the times the Pontius Pilate was the Romans rulers, and he ordered a punishment accusing of him that he was misleading the peoples, and he was ordered to be crucified and later would be killed. However, so when the Jesus was crucified and was killed, and 3 days later in the tomb he came out and appearing with his followers, and at the time he ascended to the sky. However, although this religion was becoming developed day by day, but the Christians were persecuted seriously by the Romans and also the Jewish. However, a person named was Paul, who was a Jewish, he actually took his religion as a Christianity and spreads the religions from the Jerusalems, and in this way the Romans actually had to suffer or had to watch what is happening in the name of the Christian religions. So after the Octavian Caesar's the times actually happened, that the letters, the Punic Wars happened. Punic Wars were happened between the Roman republics and also the Carthaginians soldiers or the generals. The Carthage was a strong colony of the Phoenician. However, so the Carthaginians actually the times was the great threat to the Romans' dominions, and they were the direct enemies of the Romans. So that for the reasons they fought each other and they met head to head for 3 times. The 3 conflicts, the wars happened, and eventually the Romans became the victorious, and in this way they defeated the Carthage and took the Carthage as is the part of the Roman empires. So the Romans became the victorious, and in this way the first Romans Republic history actually ending, and after later we will be discuss the another part of the Roman history.